Tuesday, January 7th, 2014. This is the Sales Playbook Podcast. I am your host, Paul Castain from yoursalesplaybook.com, and this is the podcast for sales reps, sales leaders, and we never want to forget about those business owners who want to sell more. Now, this week, we got a little something that's a little bit on the timely side as far as advice, because we're going to be talking about 3 ways to sell more this year. I mean, how much better timing can I possibly get? We're only a few days into the new year. And by the way, Happy New Year. I haven't hung out with you guys since last year. But today we got to talk about how we could sell more. That's what we want to do. For those of you who feel really good right now, you're coming off a good year, you want to feel better next year. And those of you who didn't do so well last year, well, don't worry. Uncle Paul's got you covered. I've got a lot of ideas I want to share for you today. And I also want to let you know that this week's episode of the Sales Playbook Podcast is sponsored by our online sales school program. And I'm going to share details with you about the program later on at the end of today's podcast. But you guys know how I like to roll, man. I don't like to spend a lot of time telling you what I'm going to be talking about and all this foreplay, man. We got to get down to business here. So let's start with item number 1. And you know what? I'm sorry, I lied. There is going to be one thing that we're going to do. If you are driving in your car, that's cool. I want to ride shotgun with you right now. If you're on the bicycle or the treadmill at the gym, I love working out with you guys, man. I got to get in shape with you too. But you got to promise me something. You got to go back at some point when you can safely do this. Please do not try to do this while you're driving in a car. But you got to take some notes and you got to write these things down. Got a lot of tips for you. And they're going to be completely useless for you if you just use this as a rah-rah session to make you walk a little faster on the treadmill or to go another 5 miles an hour more in the car, which I hope you're not doing. But seriously, I want you to circle back and take some notes today. So item number 1, and I need to tell you that items number 1 and 2, you're going to want to say duh. This is going to be stuff that we've covered before, but you need to understand something. I never have an issue with content. In other words, I don't need to bring this stuff up to just kill some time. If anything, I go overtime on every one of these podcasts. If I'm bringing it up to you, it means that I see it way too many times out there, and there's a reason for it. So item number 1, resist your urge to say duh to this. You need to start scheduling your hunting time, respect it, and schedule calendar kicks on your smartphone. Let me say this one again, and I'm going to explain every one of these things that I just laid out for you in Castain speak. First of all, you got to schedule your hunting time, respect it, and then schedule calendar kicks on your smartphone. So let's kind of go through this right now. The very first thing that I always advise my coaching clients to do is to create an 11:30 plan. You got to create an 11:30 plan, and you write that out like you would write out 11:30, like the time of day being 11:30. And each one of those numbers actually stands for something as far as your activity goes, your hunting activity. So let's take that first one in the 11:30 plan. What are the things that you feel as a sales professional that you need to be doing on a daily basis? Think of all the things you can and mix it up too. Don't just make phone calls, and don't just be real generic like that. Get specific. Specifically, what are the types of phone calls you need to be making? And by the way, mix it up a little bit. Do you think you should be emailing every single day? Are there things on your social network? Like me, I need to show up every day. That's one thing that I preach heavily, and I got to practice what I preach. So there are some things on social networking that I need to do, like updating my status update. I want to give a sales tip every day to you guys so that you continue to find value in following me. So some of those things are important. There's a lot more to it, but really that's me. And the Castain story is a boring story. I want to know about you. What are the things that you feel that you should be doing on a daily basis as far as hunting? and going after business that you can bring home the bacon. Now, you're going to do the same thing weekly. Are there some weekly things that you feel that you should be doing? And again, I kind of like to tie it back to social networking, and I don't want you to think that I'm leaning too heavily on that, because again, I feel the same way about people who rely too much on social networking. Mix it up and get some other things in there. But for a lot of you that are listening, you kind of turn to me for some tips in that area and how you can marry it in with the traditional hunting methods. Well, some of the things that I like to do on a weekly basis as far as my social networking is I have goals for myself as far as participation in groups and even starting discussions in my own sales playbook group on LinkedIn, as well as other people's groups. I think of things like that. I also like to, on a weekly basis, take a certain number of people that are in my network, reach out to them, take it off my computer screen, and actually imagine this, have a good old-fashioned live as opposed to dead conversation with them. I find that those two efforts kind of complement each other very, very well. And by the way, I just find that these relationships are so much more valuable when we bring them to real time. But those are just two of the things that I want to do on a weekly basis, and it's just under the category of social networking. There are certain things that I just want to make sure that I mail out so many pieces to people in my network every week. There are certain other things that I do, but again, enough about me. What do you think you should be doing on a weekly basis? And then the 30, really, you could put in parentheses, because it's kind of like 30 days, but I would go a step further, and you could put in parentheses 4 to 6 weeks. What are the things that you feel you should be doing on a monthly basis? Now, some of you may want to have your prospects on a frequency where every one of them is quote-unquote touched on a monthly basis, that they have some kind of exposure to your brand. And that's like a minimum level. I mean, I know plenty of you, and myself included, once a month is not enough, especially when we're dealing with people with a limited attention span and in a world where there's just way too many distractions for them. So once a month is your bare minimum, but you get the point. What are some things that you can do? Now, what you want to do, just to keep yourself thinking about mixing it up, is continually think about different categories. Maybe there's some email things. For example, maybe you send out a monthly type of email newsletter. Okay, so that could be one of the things you commit to on a monthly basis. Maybe on a monthly basis you want to attend two networking events, traditional networking, like of the kind where you go and hopefully there's a bar there to make it more interesting, right? And if ever we run into each other and there's a bar there, I always accept people from my network buying me a drink. I just want to put that out there in case we run into each other. So margarita, rocks, salt, please, for Uncle Paul. So just want to, again, make sure that that's one of your takeaways today. Uncle Paul loves his margaritas. But there's more to it than that. So what I want you to do is kind of think about that. The point of the 11:30 plan is to get you kind of focused and think about all the things you need to be doing so that then you could move on from there and start to schedule these things. Now, why in the heck would you possibly schedule the things that you know you should be doing? The first one is really going to be a kick in the ass to you guys and to myself, because I'm guilty too of this thing called being human. The reason why you want to schedule this is because, seriously, folks, let's just kind of bottom line this. You and I are not serious about things until we schedule it. In fact, here's what I want you to do from now on. If you ever find yourself saying, yes, I love that idea that Paul was talking about on a weekly basis, I want to call 3 people from my network and schedule things and have that call and get to know them. And yeah, I love the idea of going to 2 live networking events or doing some of these other ideas Castain and some of these other bloggers are talking about. If you find yourself saying that and you don't immediately schedule it, here's what I want you to do. We're going to have fun with this. Get in the habit of saying amen after that, because what you outline there is a freaking prayer. It's a prayer. You're never going to do it. You're not serious about it until you get it on the schedule. So that's what I want you to do from now on. You hear a good idea that I'm talking about, or any of these incredible sales bloggers that are out there. I mean, there's just like no shortage of awesome advice out there. Don't just like say, yeah, good idea. Do it, man. Get it on the schedule. And you'll find you get a lot more done that way. But the other thing, too, is that when you don't schedule these things, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to be in more of a response mode and more of an order taker mode and more of kind of in an administrative type of mindset where you're kind of doing things, administrative tasks. And at the very least, your focus is going to be way, way off because these other things are going to kind of present themselves as bright, shiny objects to you. So I can go on and on about that, but I want to go on to one of the other things that I mentioned within this first tip. I also mentioned to you that you want to have calendar kicks. A calendar kick is really a scheduled kick in your ass. And this one came to me, it's amazing. Sometimes we can get the best advice from the newbies in sales. I mean, I used to teach this program a few years ago for people who are brand spanking new to sales. And one of these people, I mean, seriously, when I say brand spanking new, I think he was in sales all of about 3 weeks. The guy was about 22 years old, maybe 23 or 24 at the time, a youngin' to some of us older folk like me, pushing like 48, 49 years of age. I don't know why the hell I said pushing 48, man. I've been on the far side of 48 for about 6 months now. Sorry, folks. Not enough coffee or maybe too many margaritas. You will never know. But what this person said, one of the things that he had just started to do was he scheduled little kicks in the ass because he knows how he operates. And the way he operates is the way many of us operate. We have great intention. In other words, we're well-intentioned. We plan on getting on that phone and making it happen. Hey, brand new year. Let's go get him, Tiger. And then guess what? Life just kind of happens and customers are calling and fires need to be put out. So what he does is he has things scheduled for sometimes around maybe like 10, 15 minutes after that task was supposed to have happened. And it's basically a simple question that he has in there. And the question is something along the lines of, are you doing, and you fill in the blank, are you making the phone calls? Are you emailing the database? Are you doing whatever that task is? Are you ready for this next part? I love this part because it really just jolts my inner competitor. Or is somebody taking your money right now? So if I'm supposed to be on the phone at 9:30 tomorrow morning, I might maybe about 9:45, right around the time where I'm still kind of procrastinating. I don't want to go on the phone. Or I'm just kind of letting all this other stuff take me away from the phone. Probably around 9:45, man, it'd be pretty cool to have a little calendar kick in the ass saying, Castain, dude, are you on the phone or is somebody taking your money right now? I don't know about you guys, man. I see something I'm like, hell no, you're not taking my money. Come get this money, man. I'll break a bottle. I'll cut you, you son of a bitch. You know how it works. But anyway, that's how I think. So you might want to just kind of wake up that inner competitor in you. I mean, that's just a really cool thing that you can do. Another little calendar kick you could do, being that this is called an 11:30 plan. How about a little calendar kick scheduled for 11:30 that says something along the lines of, how you doing on that 11:30 plan? And you know what? To do it right, you got to put some tone in that message. Almost like an annoying mother-in-law, like, how you doing on that diet? That kind of nonsense, right? You got to have that kind of scheduled kick in your rear end. But anyway, that's one of the things that I would do. And by the way, just a very quick little commercial. If that interests you, that type of thing, you guys definitely would want to check out, and we have it as an on-demand training. There's 2 sessions. We have something called Time Management for the Aspiring Sales Rock Star. Again, you can kind of go at your own pace. I'll put that in the show notes. But I think it's time to move on to item number 2 because we beat the hell out of item number 1. Item number 2 is, again, this isn't new ground. Number 2 here. We've talked about this before. You ready? Here it comes. Repetitive, annoying message from Uncle Paul coming at you in 3, 2, 1. Stop clinging to your preferred hunting platform. Now, many people, and I see this all the time, man, many of you know I'm really active in our LinkedIn group. have a lot of discussions. I talk to a lot of my coaching clients about this and a lot of the kickoff keynote speeches that I do this time of year. And I hear people tell me all the time, Paul, I prefer the phone. Other people tell me, nah, man, nobody picks up the phone. I prefer email. Or other people say, I prefer social networks. And you know what, too? There's another thing that people say. They kind of take a negative slant on this, and they'll say things like, I don't get cold calling. I don't get emails. I don't get the social networks. Now, here is where I'm going to be brutal with you. I mean, that's what I do. Here it comes. If you don't like it, just go check out and have a group hug and pick flowers with another sales trainer. But here it comes. Nobody gives a damn about what you prefer or what you get. Let me say that again. I feel like I should type this one in all caps. I don't even want to yell it at you, man. I'm going to piss off my wife downstairs. If I yell up here, she'll think like an intruder came in the house and I'm in a brawl. Nobody could care less. Nobody cares about what you prefer or what you get. The only thing that they care about, you ready for this startling revelation? This is why I make the big bucks, folks, right? Because I say brilliant things like this. You ready? And of course I'm being sarcastic. They only care about what they prefer or what they get. So when you cling just to that phone, or you cling just to those social networks or content marketing, you are limiting your results. I think this tip alone, seriously, you could literally turn off the podcast, go off and make more money this year than you ever have. Because too many salespeople right now forget, and I'm sorry, again, if this is brutal, that this is the 21st century. This isn't the only thing we have. It's like the damn telegraph. We've got all these things at our disposal, and yet we tend to cling to the things where either we're most good at, right, that we do the best, or that we just like, or that's safest, or whatever. Man, that is really limiting our results because, again, everybody has their preferred, and it's typically not just really based on what we prefer. I mean, it might be coincidence, but no, they go where they want to go. The other reason why you want to mix it up is because you're going to be less boring. Because, you know what, it's going to sound like I'm slapping the people who love the phone in the face, and maybe I am a little bit. I respect the phone, but too many people rely on it exclusively, so you're going to be less boring if you're not one of the people who only calls them to kind of introduce the idea that you do business. I'm also going to tell you that you're going to stand out because it's less noisy once we start getting away from some of those other venues. I'm going to tell you the other thing, and it's a real selfish thing that I'm going to give you permission here to be selfish about. It's going to be less boring to you because I really want you to write this down. Again, if you're driving, kindly pull the car over. I don't want to be responsible for some kind of an accident or whatever it is, but you need to write this down. You ready? You're not wired to do only one thing. You are not wired, neither am I, to do one thing. Salespeople have probably some of the worst ADD on the planet. I don't say that sarcastically. I'm sorry if you truly have been diagnosed with ADD. I'm not being a wise ass here. I'm telling you that we are wired in such a way that we cannot do one thing. We are distracted easily. So why would you work against the very way that you are wired? The way that you're wired is to do several things. So let me give you an example, and I've given this example before. One of the things, and I will always cringe when one of my clients say this to me, and here's the scenario. Sorry for the repetition, but repetition is the mother of skill, at least so they say. Well, I have many clients that'll say, Paul, you would be so proud of me, man. You're going to be proud of me, dude, because Thursday I've blocked out the entire day to do nothing but cold call. Or I'll have somebody else say, you know what, Paul, I've blocked out all day Tuesday for social networking. And my response, it's generally to the calling one, because I think people feel that that's all we should be doing as sales reps. And again, that was real 1970s and 1980s, 1990s. But man, it's a different world right now. My response is, are you crazy? Why in the hell would you want to spend an entire day, unless you're an inside sales rep, on the phone? Are you crazy? First of all, that's a lot of rejection. I don't care how strong you are or how much of a man you want to pretend to be. I don't know too many people that can handle a day of rejection and just like going into voicemails. I mean, it is not easy. It doesn't mean that we should neglect it. It just simply means that how about like giving it a little company and breaking it up and making it interesting for yourself and doing some other things like marrying those phone calls in with some emails, in with some social networking activities, and in with some other things that you could certainly be doing there. So I want you to think about that and just realize that there's just so much out there that you could be doing. And maybe a great way to go about it. And you know what's funny? Somebody actually put a very similar question up in the LinkedIn group. It's almost like you really have to look at whatever you're clinging to and kind of look at it like, if this didn't exist, what other things or what other means would I have to go out and get my name in front of people? So take whatever it is that you're clinging to and just kind of say, if I could not use that, what else would be at my disposal? And start doing that. And you know what? That kind of goes back to the 1130 plan, doesn't it? Kind of get those things onto your 1130 plan and break it up in a manner that, okay, well, on a daily basis, I think I'm going to start doing this in addition to the phone. And on a weekly basis, monthly basis, 4 to 6 week basis, so on and so forth. So I want you to think about that. That brings us, ladies and gentlemen, right up to item number 3. This one is kind of new ground for us. We really haven't spoken about this. If we have, I think it was briefly. I think it was in a blog post. I really don't think we've done it that much in the podcast. But either way, again, man, we're going on that repetition thing today. Item number 3 is create ways for your efforts to smile at each other. Right? It sounds real warm and fuzzy. Like, come here, give Uncle Paul a hug, man. I'm feeling vulnerable right now. But seriously, create ways for your efforts to smile at each other. Let me just give you just a real quick, lame definition of what I mean by this idea of an effort smiling at each other. It's simply one effort, one type of touch, if you will, calling attention and supporting another one that's going to be coming up like right on the tail end of that effort. So let me give you some examples, and there's going to be 2 different categories that I'm going to do with this. The first one is within your social networks, and the other one is kind of more traditional means and kind of, again, marrying them, because what we want to do is we want to mix up efforts, and when we mix up efforts and have one thing complement another, almost like a well-orchestrated campaign, they're more effective and they have more momentum and you're more memorable, and that's what I want for you this year. So let's talk about social networks first. You know, what I want you to start doing with your social networks is like, and this is something you could do next week. I'm going to be doing it next week. If you're in my network, you're going to see it firsthand. And if you're not in my network, man, hop on by LinkedIn and connect with me because you'll see it. I'm going to do this probably around Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. But send out an email to everybody right through LinkedIn especially, and just a little note and subject line, where else can we connect? And in the body of the email, I think the gist of that email should be something along the lines of, and I'm winging this. I don't have the email in front of me, folks, so forgive me. But the gist is something along the lines of, like you, I participate on more than one social network, and I wanted an opportunity to connect with you there as well. Here are some of the places where you can find me. And then go on to list the other platforms where you participate. In my case, man, I'm everywhere. Or not really everywhere. I'm in a lot of places. Like, I have my information about Twitter and Google Plus and certainly Facebook. I have 2 different Facebook accounts. My personal account, which, by the way, goes against the grain of the traditional conventional thinking. I actually connect with a lot of my prospects on a personal level on Facebook. And you know what? I'm going to put a little link to that, a little thing that I did, another podcast on how to use Facebook and why I choose to connect personally with people on Facebook, which, again, I know a lot of you are uncomfortable with it, and I just want you to kind of hear me out in that podcast about it. But what I do, and this is really cool, and I want you to jot this down. One of the things that you can do, there's something called tinyurl.com, and there's other services that you can use for this. And what I do is I create almost like a vanity URL, like a custom URL for each one of those things. So what I might do is just have the link and make it more memorable, and I'll customize the tail end of it, and it might be like tinyurl.com or whatever the heck it is, / Castain Facebook / Castain Google, Castain YouTube, or PC Google, or whatever it is. I'll do things like that. It's a little more memorable, kind of a personal branding thing, and it's just easy for them to remember and all that. So that's one of the things that I'll do. But here's why you want to send out that email. I realize I probably should have started with the why. Sorry, folks. Here's what you can do. I mean, I kind of think that social networking in a way is like dating. It's a courtship. And you know how I feel? I think too many people just kind of go right for the marriage, or worse yet, the one night stand. It's kind of like, hi, I'm Paul, let's get married, right? That kind of thing. And we need to make it more of a courtship. But now here's the thing. If we're going to use this whole dating example, you know, when you're getting to know someone, and we can even move beyond that, we talk about your friendships that you have. When we're getting to know people, it's kind of cool to hang out with them in different settings. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, we can learn about them. People behave differently in different settings. I mean, in a dating scenario, there might be times that you get together where it's kind of a movie night at home. Other times you might go out to the movies. I mean, let's get away from movies. Maybe you're going to meet for a drink one time, or you're going to meet over at Starbucks, or maybe you can, I don't know, you're going to go out and go shopping at Bed Bath & Beyond. I don't know, but different places just kind of give us different behavior, and they give us different ideas and thoughts about each other, and just a different experience, doesn't it? Well, it's the same thing with social networking. People behave differently on different platforms. There are a lot of people who believe Facebook is more personal, and we look at LinkedIn, and it's more business formal. Twitter takes on yet a different dimension, so on and so forth. So why not give people that opportunity to kind of, quote unquote, admire you from afar and see different sides of you? I would venture to say you have different sides of your personality, and I'm also here to tell you, so do your prospects, and you might learn that they're passionate about a particular charity or cause on another network that you never would have learned about on LinkedIn, because people generally don't talk about that there. You might learn, the example I've used over and over again, I closed a major deal with someone who I was connected with on Facebook, who found out that I'm another musician, and we started talking about getting together and jamming, and next thing you know, he was like, hey, wait a minute, man, I head up a sales force of a few hundred people, like, why aren't I talking to you about training? I'm like, yeah, like, why the hell aren't you, man? So, and we were able to start doing business together. But that's kind of the selfish side of it too. I've also been able to learn about other people in seeing those sides. And many times people dismiss this, and yet they think it's perfectly okay to go to their office and look around and see a picture of kids, so they must be into kids or golf or like that mounted fish on the wall. That's okay, but it's not okay to get to know people on a social network. So I think it's very, very important that you expand the places where you're hanging out with people. And the other reason, it goes back to what I said before, everyone has their preferred platform. So you might have connected with somebody on LinkedIn who only uses LinkedIn passively, but meanwhile they're all over Twitter, or they're all over Facebook, they're all over Google+. Why limit your possibilities? So that's one of the things. That's a real serious action item for you to consider this week. Maybe and schedule it. Again, we don't want to be saying amen throughout this podcast. I don't want to turn it into the Castain Amen Hour like it's some spiritual healing thing we're going to be doing here every week. I want you to take action. It's a new year. We've got to start taking action. So if you're serious about that tip and you like it, you can actually do two things. One, schedule it. Number two, if you want a freebie, I'm going to make you work for it. I want you to email me, paul@yoursalesplaybook.com. paul@yoursalesplaybook.com. I will send you the very email, a template of it, nice Word doc, so you can edit it to your personality as you see fit. I'll send you what I'm going to be sending everybody out this week. And again, if you're in my network, you'll see it. So that's one of the things that you can do. The other thing that you can do, and I would advise you to do this sparingly on your social networks, is in your status updates. Every once in a while, please don't overkill this one. Maybe like a simple thing. Are we connected on Twitter? Are we connected on whatever? Like just one at a time here and there. Like if I put a message up tomorrow on LinkedIn, are we connected on Twitter? I'm not going to do another message 15 minutes later. I might wait like another week or two, or at least several days before I put one up about another network or whatever. But that's something that I would do. Because again, you might have a situation where you have somebody who's just real passive in their efforts on LinkedIn, and yet they're all over these other networks. And that's what we want for you. We want opportunities for you to connect, get to know them get to know you, and kind of transition those into clients. Next, the other thing you can do, and then we're going to kind of get off this whole, actually two things that we can, and then we're going to get off the social networking thing. When you send out emails, you should be taking advantage of your auto signature. And in that auto signature, generally you put your contact information. And yes, some of you might put icons for like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and things like that. I would go a step further. Right within that auto signature, put a space and then put a PS. And in the PS, you could put something like, are we connected on? And change that out once or twice a month to a different network. And by the way, just a quick little hint about that whole PS thing. You got to change them out. You can't keep the same damn PS in there for 6 months. It becomes like these people put the motivational quote, like you're basically conditioning someone not to continue to look at it. So you want to change it up, consider different font styles, or typefaces and different sizes and different colors, just to kind of draw attention to it. So that's something you could do there. But the other thing now, let's kind of go more onto the traditional side. Now, this bit of advice that I'm going to give you right now kind of centers around something that's been around forever. Many of you have heard of this, but I guarantee you a lot of you maybe for whatever reason, like maybe getting caught up in life and all, haven't utilized this approach in a while. There's a little something called the veto letter. And the veto letter is based on a really cool book, by the way, and I still think there's some really good advice in the book. It was written a while ago. I want to guess at least probably 10 or 15 years ago. If I recall, that's when I read it. It was at least 10 or 12 years ago or something like that. And it's called Selling to Veto, and veto really stands for very important top officer. And one of the techniques in the book is really where we're encouraged to use something called a veto letter, where again, I'm not going to go through the whole bit of it, but the gist of it is kind of where we approach a prospect. And what we do in there, after we say a variety of other things, what we do is we mention that we're going to be calling, and we give a specific day and time. Now, what's beautiful about that letter is that it really illustrates this idea of how one effort should smile at and encourage and reinforce another effort. And what it does is it creates anticipation. It's almost like if you do it well, you give someone a potato chip and you tell them that, hey, by the way, I'm going to be coming back on Thursday with the entire bag of potato chips for you, or popcorn if you prefer, if you like me. So that's what you kind of do. So that's kind of at the core of these things that I'm going to talk to you about next. Only a few. I mean, could you take this same veto letter approach and maybe send an email, right, with a link, with a private YouTube video? In other words, you market privately, so only this prospect would get that video from you. And now they're seeing you, and they realize that it's a human being at the other end of that email, and they're hearing you, kind of looking into your eyes, and they realize that you're a human being, and you keep it short and sweet. Personally, I would never go beyond 2 minutes. I think it's better if you keep the video at about a minute because of the limited attention span that we all have. And in it, you kind of mention at the end that you're going to be calling on such and such a date, and then to maybe talk to them a little bit more about something. And just as a side note, I mean, if you really want to have a little more impact, whether you kind of send the letter or like you kind of utilize this whole YouTube approach that I'm mentioning, what you do is, I mean, this is where your meticulous pre-call planning research comes into effect. If you've learned something about that company and you have some ideas that could truly impact their efforts or make something go away in those areas and alleviate some pain or help them embrace opportunity, then you need to allude to that and let that be the potato chip. So that's one of the ideas right there, but we don't have to stop right there. Could you also maybe send something cool and or creative through the mail or delivery service or something like that? Example, and I'm sorry if this is hokey, but I'm not going to quit my day job to be a creative door opener here. I just want to get you thinking of a better idea. I mean, could you go like get a giant cookie and just have it like inscribed, "We want to take a bite out of your business." Deliver it with a note, "Going to be calling you on this date." Well, that's using the veto approach right there. Again, one effort, that creative attention getter that you've done, is now smiling at something you're going to be doing on Thursday or next week or whatever. I wouldn't wait too long, by the way, because of those limited attention spans. Is there something that maybe you could FedEx, or is there something creative that you could do through the use of a greeting card? But you get the idea. So really, what we're talking about here, and just kind of put all of this together, aside from scheduling this stuff, right? Actually getting it on the calendar, have some scheduled kicks in the rear end. We also want to mix it up. We said, I think it's very important that we stop relying on what we prefer and we realize that other people have their preferred. But then, while we're mixing it up, why don't we mix it up in such a way that one of these efforts always smiles at something else that we're doing? I mean, I think that's just extremely, extremely important. So there you have it. 3 ways that you could definitely sell more this year. And let's be perfectly honest with each other. There are so many more things that we could have added to this discussion today. We could talk about asking for more referrals, and we could talk about different ways to hunt and qualify. We could talk about asking better questions in your meetings and ways that you could stand out. But I wanted to keep it simple. 3 very, very simple things that, I mean, you could do in your sleep, but you have to start. Now, at the beginning of the podcast today, I mentioned that we were sponsored by our online sales school program. I thought we'd go there for a minute. We're going to be kicking it off again in about 2 weeks. And man, I got to tell you, time is flying, because I remember when I first started talking about this, and it was probably around Thanksgiving, and we had all this time. It was like 2 months at that point, maybe 2.5 months, whenever it was we first started. And now here we are. We're 2 weeks out. We're going to be kicking off again on January 22nd. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about very quickly, I think the biggest mistake that people make, and we have a lot of people sign up for this. And to give you an example, our last sales school program that we did, I think we were having about 600 people that went through it. So more and more people are getting online and doing this. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make, and it's really representative of a huge mistake that salespeople make in general, is I think a lot of people might be dismissing this as basic or sales 101. And I'm going to tell you it's not, but I'm also going to tell you that even if it was going to be a sales 101 refresher for you, chances are you've abandoned the basics. Most people that come to me, by the time they get to me, it's been 5 or 6 years since they've done these things. So it's great to go around telling people, well, that's basic and that's common knowledge. But if you're not doing it, I mean, you're really doing yourself a disservice. But having said that, we're going to be talking about 8 sessions, and we're going to be dealing with everything from pre-call planning. Quick timeout on pre-call planning. I teach it very, very differently than other people do. There are things available to you today that weren't available to you years ago. And so I kind of go about that in a very different way. I show you how to listen for clues in a very different way, and in ways that present opportunities that many of your competitors are not aware of. We're also going to talk about how to get more effective on the phone. I mean, that's always a popular favorite, right? So, of course, we're going to be talking about handling objections and things like that. But we're also going to be talking about the idea of, like, again, like we talked about today, mixing those phone efforts with things like social networking, email, snail mail, creative door openers. I mean, seriously, quick timeout on that one. Why the hell aren't we demonstrating our creativity? The people that we are going to work with someday, they desperately need creative solutions to some very real challenges in their business. And the way that we're kind of demonstrating that creativity right now is basically picking up a phone. Or maybe just sending an email. We've got to demonstrate that creativity in the courtship somehow. That's a great way to be judged, and it's one of many ways that you're going to be judged. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing. We're going to talk about how you can take better control of these meetings that you work so hard to get. Wouldn't it be cool if we could talk about not only how to get control, but how to make them more productive and how to kind of put some insurance policies in place that are going to save your rear end a little bit later in the sales process. We're certainly going to be talking about that. How to ask better questions. I mean, this is one of the biggest areas where salespeople fail. They ask awful questions. I have ways of going about questioning skills that are very, very different, and I will give you my guarantee right now about something. You could not pay me enough to talk about open questions and closed questions. I'm sick of that stuff. I haven't taught it in probably about 6 or 7 years. You could not pay me enough to talk about that boring crap. I go about it a very, very different way. The other thing that we're going to be talking about is how to present your solutions in ways that help you stand out. And remember, in a world where people just don't have us on the brain, too many distractions. So how can we stand out? And then finally, we really need to talk about how you can gain commitment and overcome things like having a higher price and people stalling the sale. And the last thing that we're going to do is kind of going where a lot of sales trainers don't go. I mean, we have to be real and we have to be honest with ourselves. Man, I'll tell you, if I had the program that was foolproof, I would not be on this podcast right now. I would be retired on an island somewhere, a multi-billionaire. And again, despite the best efforts that we could possibly put forward, people are going to tell us no. So what I did was I put together an entire session on what to do when you're told no. Right from that moment, like the second it's like in that email to you, or like somebody's like speaking it to you face to face, what you can do to hopefully get you back in the game to eventually get a yes. So the other thing that I want to tell you, and then we'll kind of wrap up, is that we record each session so you can go at your own pace. And if you don't like the fact that, well, geez, man, Wednesday at 1:30, that doesn't work for me, or you're in a different time zone, don't worry about it. Sign up for it anyway. You can go at your pace. We don't take attendance. Imagine if I went through 600 names, Bueller like 600 times, man, it ain't going to work. I know you guys are busy. So that is a very good way. In fact, quite frankly, that's one of the things that I hear that people love most, that they can truly go at their own pace. So here's the bottom line, by the way. You're going to get the 8 sessions, worksheets, the recordings, several freebies that are going to remain a surprise, but I will tell you that people love the freebies. There's a lot of them. I believe in exceeding expectations. I practice what I preach, and everything comes down to just an amount that you're not going to have to mortgage a house to enroll. $395 is what we charge. No hidden costs after that. That's it. So if this is something that interests you, and I hope it does, I do believe that we have to invest in ourselves. I think you're worth it, by the way. Go back to the show notes, which you can find at yoursalesplaybook.com/96. And speaking of going back to yoursalesplaybook.com/96. Would you please circle back anyway? I'm anxious to hear your comments about today's session. Give me your thoughts. If you have additional ideas, let's start getting the community involved and see what we can come up with when we leverage the incredible brain power of this whole group of sales playbook folks. So with that, I am Paul Castain from yoursalesplaybook.com. I am wishing you an incredible week ahead. Go get them. The Sales Playbook Podcast is a Castain Training Systems production.